È tornata, l'hanno accolta le stesse cose.
Dreaming of Italy is something a lot of people do, but it wasn't my dream at first. I grew up in England, but my family was spread across Northern Ireland and Canada, so I felt like an outsider. Whilst most people ask themselves, what do I want to be? I was always asking a different question. Where do I want to go? For years, I thought the answer was Canada. That's where much of my family lived. In the end, I decided Canada wasn't for me for a couple reasons. One is that it's huge. It can really take 4 days to travel from Vancouver to Montreal. I'm someone who likes to travel and get around, and much of Canada is uninhabitable, and most of the population just live across the border. I also found that Anglophone countries are drowned by franchises like McDonald's and Tim Hortons. I'm drawn to the idea of small family-run businesses. Not to mention, English weather is already bad enough, so going somewhere colder didn't really make sense for me. And that's not to say you can't enjoy Canada, but these are the reasons I decided to steer away. And at university, I managed to spend a year in France, in particular Alsace. I got quite lucky with this because it's the region where the story of Beauty and the Beast is set. So you can imagine those colourful houses and vineyards as far as the eye can see. But more importantly, I discovered how connected Europe really is. All the new countries, cultures, and languages were just a couple hours drive away. One country in particular stood out, and that's Italy. I think it might be the most historically preserved country in Europe, and from the lifestyle, the cuisine, the regional identity, Italy seemed to embody everything I had begun to value during my time in Europe. So I set myself the goal of moving there, and from that moment on, it wasn't the American dream I was chasing, it was the Italian dream. And what I want to focus on in this video is whether the dream can match reality. One thing that always confused me when I talked about moving abroad was the obsession with salaries. Whenever I mentioned about moving to Italy, people would immediately ask, why? The wages are lower. If Spain came up, someone would say, but you could earn more in London. At first glance, that sounds like a sensible argument, but the older I've become, the less convincing I've found it, because what matters isn't simply how much you earn. What matters is whether your income allows you to live a life. Imagine two people. One earns $2,500 a month and spends $750 on housing. The other earns $5,500 but spends $3,000 on housing. On paper, the second person is clearly wealthier. Their salary is more than double, but after paying for the roof over their head, the difference becomes much smaller than the headline numbers suggest. That's before accounting for higher transport costs, more expensive services, and the general cost of living that often comes with high-income cities. That's why I've never found the salary comparisons particularly useful on their own, but that income without context is meaningless. What interests me is purchasing power. How much life your income actually buys. Of course, there isn't a perfect formula, but financial experts often suggest that spending less than 30% of your income on housing is comfortable, 30 to 40% is manageable, and once housing begins consuming 50% or more, financial pressure increases. And this is what fascinates me about Abruzzo, a little region in Italy. It's not that it's cheap, that's too simplistic of an argument. For someone earning remotely, receiving a pension, running an online business, or simply prioritizing lifestyle over career progression, Abruzzo can offer a version of life that is becoming increasingly difficult to find elsewhere. Eventually, every dream has to survive contact with reality, so I started looking at the numbers. What surprised me about Abruzzo wasn't how cheap it was how normal it seemed. Recent estimates suggest that the average monthly income is around $2,150, while average living costs including rent sit around $1,714, which leaves roughly $436 $1,000 per month after typical expenses. Nobody's getting rich from that, but it suggests something that feels increasingly rare in this day and age, an average salary that can still support an average life. According to the estimates, a budget-conscious single person could potentially live on $928 per month, including rent. For a couple, that figures around $1,295 per month. So for remote workers, freelancers, retirees, or anyone earning income from abroad, that creates something valuable: breathing room. But housing is where things get really interesting, with many properties available between $380 and $1,000. Coming from Britain, those numbers immediately caught my attention because when people talk about affordability, they're usually talking about housing. A more expensive coffee is annoying, but a more expensive house changes your life. When people talk about moving to Italy, they usually focus on the food, the weather, or the lifestyle, but there's another aspect that's often overlooked: the possibility of home ownership. In his book, How to Own the World, Andrew Craig argues that historically, a healthy housing market is where the average home costs around 3 to 4 times annual earnings. Once that ratio starts pushing towards 6 times income and beyond, housing becomes increasingly expensive relative to what people actually earn. That's an interesting benchmark to keep in mind when looking at property prices in places like Abruzzo. Across Abruzzo region, property prices average around €1,390 per square meter. Even in the most expensive provinces, such as Teramo and Pescara, prices are often a fraction of what many people from Britain, Ireland, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand are used to seeing. But the regional average doesn't tell the whole story. If we zoom into the province of Chieti, prices fall even further. Then there are towns like Cassoli, where there's lots of expatriates living. According to the average asking price data from Immobiliare, the average asking price in Cassoli in May 2026 was just €573 per square meter. Let's put that into perspective. A 100 square meter home would theoretically cost around €57,000. Not the deposit, not a down payment, the entire house. And we're not talking about a forgotten village in the middle of nowhere. Cassoli is a historic hill town surrounded by vineyards, olive groves, mountains, and some of Italy's most beautiful countryside. Abruzzo itself offers national parks, a stunning Adriatic coastline, medieval towns, and some of the most spectacular rural landscapes in Italy. For under €200,000, you're often not looking at a small apartment. In many cases, you're looking at a large detached property, substantial land, panoramic views, and enough space for family, guests, remote working, or even a small business venture. For someone coming from London, the comparison is striking. Today, the average London home costs roughly £520,000 to £550,000, where average annual salaries are around £45,000 to £50,000. Essentially, the typical home costs around 11 to 12 times your annual earnings, or the average annual earnings. Compare that with Andrew Craig's observation that historically healthy housing markets tend to trade at around 3 to 4 times income, and you can see why so many people feel locked out of home ownership. That's what makes places like Cassoli and the region of Abruzzo so interesting. The idea of buying an entire home for little more than a year's average London salary changes the conversation completely. It brings home ownership back in the realm of possibility, and that's the reason why so many foreigners have started looking at places like Cassoli and the wider Abruzzo region. One final note, these figures are based on the average asking price mapping and market data from Immobiliare. We are looking at broad market averages rather than the individual properties, and I'll leave a link to the data source in the description if you'd like to explore the numbers for yourself. So in this video today, I wanted to answer the question, does the dream match the reality? And unfortunately, my answer is it depends. And it depends because Italy isn't just one place. Its history is of divided regions and identities. So if you chose to live in Milan instead of Sicily, you're going to have a completely different experience. The pace of life is different, the job opportunities are different, the weather's different, the mentality changes. There's also regional dialects in each region. What I would say is the Italian dream is what you want to build, and you have to find the part of Italy that reflects the lifestyle that you want to build. Now, for me, Abruzzo has many qualities of a lifestyle that I would want, so it's a good part of Italy for me. But these things that make Italy so beautiful, their different regional identities and the diversity between them, is also one of their challenges in navigating through the system, because everything's localized. In moving to Italy, a successful way to do it and to complete your dream is by finding the right people to help you do that as well. Because yes, enjoy the restaurants, enjoy the lifestyle, the culture, the language, but you've also got to think about your healthcare. You've got to think about your taxes, your tax code. You've also got the bureaucracy. You've got the legal aspects of things like buying a house and property purchases, utilities. And this is why having a good guide that will help you do it and not exploit you is really important. So that's step one, and then step two is arriving here and then building the life that you want. So it's more nuanced than just answering, yes, the dream is real. I think the dream is what you make of it, and planning ahead is certainly going to help, and finding the right place for you is going to be the right way to move forward in that endeavor. I want to make more content like this, so if this video was useful in any way, please subscribe and you'll see more. The idea of moving to Italy is something that excites me because it's something I did 10 months ago and I don't regret the decision, and I know many people think about doing it. So if this is something that helps you make that decision, then it's a pleasure.